Florida Maquis, why do you continue to harp on psychological operations? It's just not that important. There's so many things out there we need to be informed on and be read in on. Every single thing out there, guys. Mark my words. No matter where you get your information, there is a psychological operations aspect going on to it. There is no such thing as just pure information. Everything has a visual aspect, it has an auditory aspect, and it has your own personal perspective aspect. In today's video, I'm going to lead off here showing two images that are just adjusted a little slightly, but the change in the reaction is visceral with just one minor change. First image. Now, I'm sure a lot of guys look at this image and they perhaps chuckle a little bit. Now, most women look at this image and they have a very negative response to it. Maybe some more than others. Maybe there's a small segment of the female population where this isn't that big of a deal. But generally speaking, this image evokes a negative response from women and a neutral or maybe even slightly positive response from men. Now, let's go to image number 2. We're just going to slightly adjust it. Same people, same hallway, same clothes. Now, this image, virtually no women have any type of a negative response to. And the same thing with men. Now, how can this be? And, more importantly, how would you explain to an artificial intelligence how to differentiate this? It would literally freeze up and seize and pop springs out of its ears if it even tried to. Because it's just something you can't necessarily explain about how women see the world, biological women, XX chromosome women, versus how men, XY chromosome individuals, see the world. It just is what it is, and you will never change it. Now, what if I told you the secret to all of this can be found in the process of starting a fire? We're going to talk about this over at the Patreon channel because the images I need to show and the things I need to say over there would not be allowed here. They do have algorithms. They do have things that act like little mini AIs that look for things and look for keys to shut people down. I know this is something a lot of people are very, very familiar with, the process of starting a fire. But one thing a lot of people don't see is that at each stage of the process, the previous stage becomes useless. They're all necessary and they're all integrated. But at every stage, what has to be done becomes useless in the next stage. All the way to the end. If you'd like to join us over at Patreon and see how this all ties together, it's only $1 US per month. Even less if you sign up for an entire year, fully refundable first 90 days. We talk about this every day. It's gloves off. It's beyond the censors. Why is it beyond the censors? It's because the videos are on Vimeo players, not on YouTube players or not on Google players. And that's what gives them their independence. And it's not free. It's a risk I took a while back when I paid for the space, hoping that people would file in over there, and many have. Now, there's a secret in the Bible that tells us when the end is coming. Many ask, Florida Maquis, how much longer do you think we're going to have to endure this? All of this horrible behavior from the left, all of this apostasy. And even you, Florida Maquis, you've shown pictures of girls in bikinis. It's horrible and all this other stuff. How much longer before, we are raptured away or the end comes or whatever your terminology is for it? Well, John the Baptist and Jesus both referred to there is a time when you bring the axe down upon the tree. Every tree which bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. And this is the terminology used in the end, being cast into the fire. Now, what's the key? A tree that doesn't bring forth fruit. And it's already begun. Japan's population drops by 500,000 in 2022. This is starting to happen in select places around the world. It is my humble belief that when world population ceases to grow and starts going backward, that's when judgment is going to come. When growth no longer occurs. You see, there's going to be places that are still growing, but the rest of the world will be shrinking catastrophically, not being able to make up for it. See, the first command, this Florida Monkey, why don't you obey the commands of the Bible and live a holy life? Well, here's the first one. Here's the very first command from God himself. And God sent unto them, command, be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Genesis 1:28. This is the first command. The very first command. Now, this is the exact opposite of that. Women, heterosexual women, sending out the message to men that the ideal man would have absolutely no desire whatsoever to procreate. Let me say it again. And I know a lot of you know what I'm talking about. All these heterosexual women, especially in North America and Europe, who thought, about 40 years ago, it would be a great idea, super duper fantastic idea, to send out the message that the ideal man that they would want to spend their time with and laud and lift up and turn into gods would have absolutely no desire whatsoever to have children with them. They may have the desire to have children of their own, but they're going to go do it some blasphemous way, like Dave Rubin. See, this was the beginning right here. This was the seed that started it. And believe it or not, this was from back in 2008. NBC did this study, and they proved something that you can literally see in the wild. They think they created and stumbled upon this incredible revelation. Science proves that bikinis turn men into boobs. You may have known this all along, but now it's been demonstrated scientifically. Bikinis make men, pay attention here, stupid. Now, here's their definition of stupid. You know what it was? They go through all of these machinations. And what they come down to is, I observed in my studies that men are more likely to pick a smaller immediate reward over a larger later reward. Hence, I do think that men might spend money on something they might not otherwise purchase. Men become more impulsive in any domain after exposure to sexual cues. Now, who remembers, this is maybe a couple years ago now, 2 years, there was this video that came out of Africa. And there are all these people around. There was this huge stampede of wildebeest going by. I'm sure a lot of people saw it. It was super popular. And a lot of people have done voiceovers for it and done memes. Where there's this female lion. And she was crouched down here right by this little stick of a bush. And all of these were running by. And she kept looking and kept looking and kept looking. And, she almost jumped and then she waited. And then she almost jumped again and then she waited again. And then finally, this male had had enough. And he runs in, knocks one of them over on his way to grabbing another one. Just a random one. And she runs off. You see, she was sitting there waiting for the perfect, most ideal, not realizing that eventually, there might not be another wildebeest come around the corner. Then what? Well, I guess we'll just wait for the next stampede and then we'll find the best. You see, this has to do with the fire. This has to do with starting the fire. You see, there's a time for a spark, and there's time for tinder and kindling, and then there's time for big, thick firewood. Okay? Now, big, pre-cut, giant logs of firewood have absolutely no use during the time of spark. And that little sparking device to start a fire has absolutely no use once the fire's going. See, this is the problem. This is the problem. Ladies, remember back at the Patreon channel when I said, hey, maybe find an old lion you want to survive? He might not pick the ideal, but which general was it that said a good plan executed with vigor today beats a perfect plan executed tomorrow? And those of you think that, and I've had people come to me and say that be fruitful and multiply doesn't mean have kids. And it literally does. You don't believe me, ask, well, I'm not going to bring that person up. Be fruitful, to bear fruit, literally or figuratively, to increase and multiply. This means have kids. This means make babies and do the thing that is necessary to make the babies and create the conditions around which that is celebrated and that is lifted up and that is lauded and that is valued. And that is exactly the opposite of what has happened in North America. And a lot of people want to blame the trans or they want to blame the LGBT. This didn't start there. This started in the heterosexual community with a certain paradigm. These are the birth rates by country. Don't you find it ironic that where they call the cradle of mankind is now still the only place making babies? Now, you can say whatever you want about Africa. You know, that poor, backward. Okay. They're still making babies. They're still doing what God told them to do. They're still doing what God told them to do. Whether it's the descendants of Hagar and Ishmael or the descendants of Jacob. They're doing what God told them to do. Those of you that know the Bible history know what that means. Now, on another little bit lighter note. Floridians waiting for La Palma volcano tsunami. I haven't used this in a long time. It's been a couple of years since that volcano went off, and I had tens of thousands of people come to my channel and say I needed to be talking about how Florida was going to be underwater and the giant tsunami that was going to race across the Atlantic Ocean and destroy all of Florida. Well, here we are, and a good portion of Florida, southern Florida, is underwater and has nothing to do with the tsunami. We've had a giant weather system sit off the East Coast, and we've gotten it all the way up here in Palm Coast and all the way down to Miami. They had a couple feet of rain. But it was time for it. I mean, it was what they don't tell you, what the news doesn't tell you. Here's the psychological operation on this. What they don't tell you is that Florida was bone dry. We had one of the worst droughts starting the beginning of this year. I had actually had to go out, and last year I had planted fruit trees in the backyard. I had to go get the sprinklers going. Imagine needing sprinklers in Florida. Imagine needing sprinklers in the Caribbean, basically. It's just unheard of. It was literally dusty, bone dry. And even with all of this rain, it's been such a blessing. We've had up here, let's see, today alone, almost an inch already. Weekly, 7.2 inches. Monthly, 7.25. Yearly, we're only at about 15 inches right now. So that might be, but that's all been in the last couple of weeks. But if you take that 15 inches, it's almost the end of April. They call that a third of our rain. That would make our yearly rain total about 45 inches. That's below. Usually here it's about 55 to 59 inches. So even with all the rain, we're still behind on water. And here's a picture from today. I'm way up here in Palm Coast, Daytona, New Smyrna, all the way down here. You know, it's not, windy or horribly stormy. It's just gully washes of rain. So, anyway, and one final note, whenever I talk about, especially over at the Patreon channel, about this idea of perhaps grid down, power down situation, pairing up, especially from a female perspective these days, and maybe extending the upper age limit to a different group of guys than you had considered. Everybody always wants to run to so you want to see 25-year-olds with 80-year-olds. No. Not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about 30, 35, 40, maybe bumping their age limit from 50, 55 to 60, 65. That's it. And that's actually very common down here. I've actually had a person at my Patreon channel come to me privately and say, hey, I took your advice. I met this guy. He's a lot older. A lot of my friends were really cringy on it, but we are as happy as can be, and I'm really glad I did it. And it was based on survival advice. They seem to get along quite well. Now, it's only been, a few months, but that I've made a little bit of a difference in somebody's life, and there's over 20 years age difference between them, just so you know. It is what it is. So this is what you'll probably have to look out for, in my humble opinion. Look out for when. Let me see if I can find the picture. The birth rate drops to 0. That will be your key. That will be the date to look for. Watch birth rates. Keep very close eye on birth rates. And it won't be just America or just Russia or just Great Britain or South America. World birth rates. When world birth rates start to go down or stay static, what that means is that it's time to chop down the tree. The tree is no longer bringing forth fruit. It's going backward. And it's dying. So it's time to start over. So that's my humble opinion. But once again, would love to have you over at the Patreon channel. Only $1. That's it. $1 a month. And you can pay that $1 a month for 3 straight months. And if it's not for you, you get all $3 back. You will have had no risk whatsoever. If you want to save a little money, the 90 days still applies. But if you want to buy an entire year's worth, it comes out to less than $11 for an entire year's worth of content. Believe me, it's $10 and some change. And once again, first 90 days, you can get that back. So anyway, I will leave it there. But Psychological Operations 101, try this one on your friends. And then, spark a discussion. Try this one on your friends with these 2 images. I'll leave them up here at the end so you can either screen grab them or whatever you want to do. Why this image evokes such a negative response from women, but this image evokes no negative responses from anybody. And once again, how could you explain to a computer or to an AI how to look at images like this and differentiate? Because I don't think anywhere in the world, I think you could have somebody from HR walk right through here and not see anything. And not see anything inappropriate. But if somebody from HR walked by this, they would probably have somebody in their office and giving them some type of a training seminar on appropriate and inappropriate behavior in the workplace. Why? So I'll leave it there. Psychological Operations 101. God bless. Have a great weekend. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.